There's a name that, in recent years, has become something more than a name. It has become a symbol, the symbol of a line pursued with determination, and often with devastating effects on the lives of thousands of faithful. That name is Arthur Roach. And today, according to reliable sources, Leo XIV is considering removing him. But there's one detail that almost no one is highlighting. Roche's intended destination is exactly the same one Francis had chosen for Burke. There's a name that, over the years, has become more than just a name. It's become a symbol. The symbol of a clear line, pursued with determination, sometimes stubbornly, often with effects that many define as devastating for the lives of thousands of faithful. That name is Arthur Roche, Cardinal, 76 years old, prefect of the Dicastery for Divine Worship and the Discipline of the Sacraments. Because, according to journalist Nico Spontoni, the same man who first anticipated Archbishop Rudelli's appointment as substitute of the Secretariat of State, Cardinal Roche could be removed from his post. His appointment, patron of the Order of Malta. A post, not a position, not a promotion. A decorative post generally reserved for elderly cardinals who wish to distance themselves from the real decision-making process. And here, anyone who has followed the last 12 years of ecclesiastical history will immediately recognize the pattern. Because that's exactly what happened in 2014, when Francis named Cardinal Raymond Burke patron of the Order of Malta, a move presented as a prestigious appointment. In reality, it was a removal. Burke, one of the leading exponents of the traditionalist world, was removed from his role as prefect of the Apostolic Signatura and placed in a position without real decision-making influence. Today, there's talk of doing the same thing with Roche, but with exactly the opposite direction. Previously, that position was used to remove those who defended tradition. Now they're considering using it to remove those who fought against it. The symmetry is almost perfect, and it's not meaningless. To understand what this potential move represents, we need to remember who Roche is and what it has done. It was he, as prefect of the Dicastery for Divine Worship, who was the principal executor of Traditionis Custodes, the document with which Francis, in July 2021, had reimposed severe restrictions on the traditional Mass, overturning in a few months what Benedict XVI had built with Summorum Pontificum of 2007. It was Roche who promoted the most restrictive possible interpretation of that document. It was Roche, according to what was reported by EN.News, who circulated among the cardinals on the occasion of the Extraordinary Consistory of January 2026, a 2-page document in defense of Traditionis Custodes. A text prepared without being requested, distributed as a preventive argument against any openness of the new pontificate. And it was Roche again, just a few days ago, in an interview given to osnews.com on March 27, who maintained that the concessions made by John Paul II and Benedict XVI had been simple, temporary pastoral accommodations, not a recognition of the faithful's right to that right, a prudential management of a difficulty, an exception to be overcome. This is the man who could leave the Dicastery for Divine Worship. The question many are already asking, however, is a specific one. Does removing Roche change anything substantial? Or does it just change the person, leaving the structure intact? Because this is where the situation becomes more complex and more significant. At the same time as rumors circulated about Roche's possible exit, a statement arrived from America that weighs like a millstone. Bishop Michael Martin of Charlotte, North Carolina, gave an interview to America magazine on March 26th in which he made it clear Leo XIV has no intention of changing Traditionis Custodes. The bishop justified his restrictions on the traditional Mass in his diocese, reduced to a single location with an explicit ban on the faithful kneeling during communion, as an act of obedience to existing norms. And he added, with a phrase that says more than it means, "I don't want to call them an extremist fringe. They're not. They're people who care about the liturgy, and there's something good about that. It's a concession, but it's also a diagnosis. That the faithful attached to the traditional Mass are described as not an extremist fringe, as if this were a necessary premise before justifying restrictions against them, says something about the way that reality continues to be perceived by a section of the hierarchy. And so the question becomes inevitable whether Traditionis Custodes remains in force, whether bishops continue to apply it at their own discretion, if the restrictions remain in the dioceses, if the document that generated all this is neither revoked nor amended. What really changes with Roche's removal? The face changes, the structure doesn't. And this is precisely the point that deserves to be kept in mind, because the history of recent decades reveals a recurring pattern. You remove the people who embodied a line, you leave the line intact, and then you wait for the change in tone to be perceived as a change of direction. Leo XIV met with Burke. He met with Sarah, Zen, and Müller. He sent a letter to the French bishops requesting generous inclusion for those connected to the Vetus Ordo. He allowed the washing of the feet to return to St. John Lateran. Real, concrete signals, appreciated by many. But signals are not actions, and actions, when it comes to canon law, papal documents, and norms regulating the liturgical life of millions of faithful, are the only thing that truly matters. As long as Traditionis Custodes remains in force, any bishop who wishes to apply it has every right to do so, like the Bishop of Charlotte. Like those who in recent months have closed churches, revoked permits, and restricted services to just one location per diocese. They're not disobeying, they're enforcing an existing law. And no amount of Roche's dismissal will change that. The real question, then, is not whether Roche will leave the dicastery for divine worship. The real question is who will come next, and whether whoever comes next will have the real mandate to reverse course, not just soften the tone. Because if Roche's successor found himself managing the same document, with the same powers, with the same existing regulations, the only thing that would have changed is the name on the door of that ministry. And that's why this news, while important, can't be interpreted as a turning point. It could be a signal. It could be the beginning of something, but it alone isn't enough. Tradition doesn't need a new prefect. It needs a new document. Or rather, it needs an old, unjust, and divisive document to finally be repealed. Until then, every other move should be watched, followed, but not overestimated. What do you think? If you liked the video, comment, Amen. God bless you.